This week, a task force dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism reportedly decided to sever ties with the conservative Heritage Foundation. It comes after the think tank's president, Kevin Roberts, defended Tucker Carlson's interview with a far-right anti-Semitic activist. This infighting has laid bare a growing schism within conservative circles over how to address anti-Semitism. William Brangham reports.
Nick Fuentes, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I wanted to meet you.
The interview, which lasted over 2 hours, was posted late last month and has been seen over 20 million times. The conservative commentator Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick Fuentes, the 27-year-old hard-right influencer with millions of followers known as Gatekeepers. Fuentes is known for his open racism.
White people have a special heritage here as Americans.
His misogyny, like when he wrote, "Your body, my choice," after the 2024 election.
The whole political system is just based around women never being accountable for any of their choices.
And his overt anti-Semitism, ranging from Holocaust denial to his belief in a global Jewish conspiracy.
A big challenge to that is organized Jewry in America. I don't think
the interview with Carlson drew quick, sharp condemnation from many in the conservative movement. Ben Shapiro.
Dude, Israel wishes that they could get all the Jews in order. It's so funny because, one, Jews love to argue in general. And two, if that was the case, there would be no need for like unlimited amounts of Zionist propaganda baked into the collective consciousness of young American Jews, basically from like J camp all the way until college. There would be no need for it. Everybody loves to argue. Yeah, I know, I'm joking, but the meme is 2 Jews, 3 opinions. My favorite type of anti-Semitic conspiracies are the ones that are so like objectively against the stereotypes, not like the super, harmful stereotypes, but like the funnier stereotypes that Jewish people have, like the notion that like Ashkenazi Jews and the Chinese got together to build coronavirus. Like the idea that like Ashkenazi Jews notoriously never get sick. Yeah, they built a virus that would avoid Ashkenazi Jews is so funny to me. Yeah, the famously resilient to ailments.
Editor of the conservative Daily Wire wrote, "No to the Gatekeepers, no to the cowards like Tucker Carlson who normalize their trash."
Christians can critique the state of Israel without being anti-Semitic.
But Kevin Roberts, head of the Heritage Foundation, defended Carlson. Heritage is the influential conservative think tank behind Project 2025, and which has long supported Israel and America's support for it. Roberts argued attacking Carlson was a distraction.
The venomous coalition attacking him are sowing division. Their attempt to cancel him will fail. Most importantly, the American people expect us to be focusing on our political adversaries on the left, not attacking our friends on the right.
Roberts faced a strong backlash, including from staffers within Heritage, and calls for his resignation. He later apologized and denounced Nick Fuentes specifically. But the controversy has revealed the ongoing challenge of balancing different factions within the MAGA base. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham.
For more on this, we're joined by Arno Rosenfeld. He's an enterprise reporter with The Forward, that's a Jewish news outlet, where he writes the Anti-Semitism Decoded newsletter. Thanks for being here.
It's so funny to see this. I'm sorry. I know this is a terrifying time for a lot of Jewish Americans, and to them, I say, welcome back to the fight. Jewish Americans, by and large, have been considered white in the same way that, Italians have been after experiencing forms of discrimination. And a lot of people are going, oh my God, this is terrifying. This is dangerous. And I understand why you think it's terrifying and dangerous. And it's like, yeah, this is where we've been, As a dude who's white as even having the name Hassan is enough for many people to just be like, you are a radical Islamist fundamentalist terrorist who also simultaneously wants every American to be transgender and homosexual, which is in direct violation of your Sharia law principles. And that's because you're doing taqiyya. How does that work? But that's what's going on. Right now, the debate is basically the whiteness of Jews. That's what's being discussed on the right. That's it. And that's the reason why a lot of people are freaking out. And to which I say, to the likes of Ben Shapiro, what the f*** did you think was going to happen, dumbass? Why did you think that this coalition would hold as you kept pumping racial animus over and over again, assuming that people would not actually directly hold the broader Jewish religion responsible as they have in the past? So dumb.
Arno.
Thanks for having me.
So this interview for Tucker Carlson, who's a former Fox host, a mainstay of conservative media, to invite a known Holocaust denier, a white supremacist, and Nick Fuentes onto his show for an objectively friendly interview. What does that moment represent? Why would he do that?
And like the question once again also revolves around, why is there not this level of endless pontification on the likes of Randy Fine, for example, or any number, or Tommy Tuberville, when they say America is becoming Islamic Mohammedan jihad central? Because when Nick Fuentes says like, oh, the America is being hypnotized by the organized Jewry, everyone's like, whoa, hold on now. That's pretty fucked up, which I agree. It is. It's also anti-Semitic. How come nobody has the shred of smoke for any number of different animals who are being just as racist towards people of different backgrounds, towards black people, towards brown people, towards Muslims? What's up with that? What's up with that? You can't tell Americans that like some forms of bigotry are actually A-okay and then assume that Jews are going to be spared and they're going to be permanently considered white. It don't work that way. If anything, this kind of back and forth actually fuels the anti-Semitism conspiracies, because the average person goes, wait a minute, I can be racist to everybody I want, but not the Jews. How dare you? There must be a reason for it.
So I think a few things are going on here, because in addition to being all the things that you described about Nick Fuentes, he's also an incredibly influential pundit in a certain corner of the conservative movement. He has many, hundreds of thousands of people tune into his live streams. He has millions of followers online. And I think Carlson recognized...
Okay, calm down, first of all. That's Rumble. It's bought it into oblivion.
That Fuentes is growing in influence, and Carlson wanted to harness that influence. In this case, he was really trying to get Fuentes to align with him on trying to get the MAGA movement to withdraw support for Israel. And as part of that, he was trying to convince Fuentes to back away from some of his more inflammatory rhetoric around Jews, because Carlson thought that was bad for the larger goal that they shared of trying to reduce American support for Israel. So that's why Carlson had Fuentes on. It wasn't just about giving him a platform, but it was about trying to sort of win him over or build an alliance. And I think that's what worried a lot of people, because Carlson has a lot more mainstream credibility than Fuentes does. And so if they're joining forces, that's concerning to a lot of people.
Is that shift, is that illustrative of a larger split or divide within conservatives?
Absolutely. I mean, Trump has historically supported Israel, but there is a real dividing line there, and we're starting to see some breakaways in Congress, too. Folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene becoming more hostile to American aid for Israel. But on the right, especially, folks like Carlson, certainly people like Fuentes, join that hostility toward support for Israel with just overt anti-Semitism, tropes, conspiracy theories about Jews.
So then you have the statement from the president of the Heritage Foundation, right, stepping in to defend Carlson. What do you make of that?
So I think it was sort of, in some respects, an unforced error on the part of the Heritage Foundation. Nobody was actually asking them to weigh in here. And so the fact that Roberts would go out of his way to defend Carlson, not just as a friend, but as a legitimate voice in the conservative movement, and his decision to interview Fuentes as a legitimate political decision.
These are part of the reason why I always think it's so ridiculous when motherfuckers be like, oh, Hassan, you're anti-Semitic, you're anti-Semitic. We finally figured it out. After 12 years of advocacy against anti-Semitism, we figured it out. This 3-second clip proves it. There is a lot of motion in being anti-Semitic right now. And not only that, but also it is, unfortunately, because of how Americans operate, easier to be anti-Semitic and anti-Israel than it is to not be anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. That's just the truth. It is much easier to help Americans understand why Israel is bad by just simply leaning into Jews-controlled media narratives, okay? Straight up. And it's something that I've been warning about for years. It is absolutely ridiculous. Is Carlson genuinely anti-Semitic? I think so. I think he's just the operative who reads the room and realizes that, the popular base is infinitely more anti-Semitic than the Republican Party presents itself as. It's the same thing that I always say, like, Hassan, you're transphobic. It's like, brother, if I was transphobic, I wouldn't be couching it in coded language. Hassan, you're misogynistic. It's like, yeah, okay. If I was misogynistic, I'd just be screaming for the rooftops about how women ain't shit. These are incredibly popular reactionary social positions. Many of you do not understand how broadly popular this shit is. There is no reason to shelter the public from your bigoted point of view if you are bigoted. Especially when it comes to trans issues, and especially when it comes to anti-Semitism as well.
decision alarmed a lot of people, because I think there are folks who recognize that Fuentes might be growing in influence, but he's on these dark corners of the internet, and you can't really police those very well. Carlson was booted from Fox News. He's also independent right now. But Heritage is still a very influential gatekeeper and policy voice within the MAGA movement in Washington, D.C. And so if it's not just Carlson as a more mainstream voice than Fuentes, bringing Fuentes along, but then it's Heritage giving their stamp of approval to Carlson, I think that's what scared a lot of people. They started thinking, oh my gosh, where are the gatekeepers? Who's going to stop this open anti-Semitism and animosity toward Jews from entering the political mainstream?
So what about that? What about the keepers of that firewall, as it were? Because you have seen people like Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz and Ben Shapiro come out against Nick Fuentes unequivocally. But now you have him being hosted on a show with Tucker Carlson. Is he existing?
All the goats. They're doing the same thing that they did to MAGA in 2015 to the America First Groyper initiatives now. I do not see a world where they successfully pack this up, because if you have developed a movement off of shitting on every marginalized group, and that is your North Star, as it is the Republicans, why wouldn't they also do that to the Jews? When Jews, for fascists, have been the historic enemy, for Christians in general, even before fascism, was the target of tremendous enmity. Why wouldn't they do that to Jewish people? Yeah, no, what's going on, and I cannot believe I'm about to say this, but this is Adam Friedland's take. He always would jokingly say, like, I'm scared of Jews no longer being considered white. But that's what's going on. Jews had a good run being white, especially like post 9/11, probably peak white. Like, I would say, I don't know when this pivot happened, but I would assume it was like probably 80s, 90s. Like, it just kept, like, Jews kept being seen as more and more a part of the white in group. Like, I would say probably like the 80s, right? Because like up until the 60s, Jews were getting packed up left and right, especially because, you know, many of them had socialist tendencies, and America was doing the Cold War and stuff. So that was like, you know, a big problem for them. The McCarthyist trials were unironically purging a lot of Jews from positions of power. I think somewhere along the way, America was no longer seen as or self-described as a Christian nation, but a Judeo-Christian one. And it peaked after 9/11. Jews are literally white though, but the race is white. Look at me. Look. Me too. I'm over here in the gallows looking at you going, first time? What do you think? Yeah, I know. You can be white and not be a part of the white in-group. Whiteness is a socio-political construct defined by what it's not. Its proximity to blackness, first and foremost, but also simply defined by what what the edges of whiteness are.
In the dark corners, or is that force and that voice more ascendant among conservative circles?
You know, I think what Carlson realized, and I think the reason that Carlson, and he said this in the conversation with Fuentes, brought Fuentes on is because those gatekeepers have not been able to stop Fuentes' rise. One thing that Fuentes talked about in that interview was his longstanding feud with Ben Shapiro, who he said for years has been trying to keep him out of the mainstream. And it hasn't worked. So we did see, I mean, the backlash was strong, and it does seem like, you know, Roberts had to apologize. Heritage has walked.
The left-wing Jews would say this is coming, but the bootlicking Jews are probably so pissed off right now. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm at risk of being genocided yet, but dude, being a minority is not lit. Even if it's not a Holocaust, imagine being allowed to forget what being a minority is like. Oof, pain. No, I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying, Lesbo Princess. Like, welcome back to the fight. I mean, well, for many Jews in this community, obviously, you already were aware of this shit because you're progressive, but I'm talking about like the likes of Ben Shapiro, who have just refused to see the writing on the wall, and also, perhaps even more consequentially, his own personal involvement with normalizing this kind of hatred.
Talked a little bit of this back. They've certainly been receptive to the criticism, but the fact that it would even happen in the first place is a sign of how much the discourse has moved.
I also want to point out, President Trump has met with Nick Fuentes before at Mar-a-Lago. He said he didn't know who he was or what he stood for, but he also met with Kanye West, who has been anti-Semitic and pro-Hitler in some of his remarks. That was years ago, though. Is there something different about this moment?
I think that is a part of how we got to this moment. So I think this is the culmination of years of these trends. I mean, Donald Trump in 2016, I think, really called the bluff of a lot of Republican politicians who'd been hinting at various things but hadn't said them openly about immigrants, for example. And Fuentes, I think, has called the bluff of...
That's so funny. It's not calling the bluff. It just means, like, being more racist. Like, yeah. And also being pro-Hitler. All these Republicans are like, ooh, can he say that? No, like, they were like, oh, hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, I love that. No, talk to me more about how Mexicans are rapists, you know? But that's the thing, like, this was always the maximalist position, you know? The more fascist you become, like, of course, you're going to eventually go back to, you know, the OG. Says everything that we were publicized sermons warning against Mamdani by name, but none against Trump, the man who, from Charlottesville to Tree of Life, January 6th, Camp Auschwitz, and dinner with Nick Fuentes has fueled anti-Semitism and emboldened neo-Nazis. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. And the ADL every step of the way was like, nah, it's fine. They love Israel.
Conservative media who have hinted at globalists, for example, and Fuentes just comes out and says, no, we're talking about Jews. And so I think that they're very like-minded in that sense of saying, you know, we don't have to talk around this stuff. We don't have to use euphemisms. We can just say it. And, you know, Trump came back to office. Fuentes got a bigger platform. So it's really a culmination more than a shift, I think.
But what does all the rhetoric mean in the real world? We know there's a connection between what is said when it comes to anti-Semitism and real-world violence against Jews. How are American Jews looking at this?
You know, I think what's really scary for a lot of American Jews, and one thing that American Jews have cared a lot about, are the maintenance of liberal democratic norms. Not a partisan thing so much as maintaining gatekeepers of sort of polite society, maintaining the ability to say, you know, this rhetoric is beyond the pale. We can't tolerate this. And so as those things break down, it's less that there's a one-to-one, somebody watches that interview and goes out and commits an act of anti-Semitism. That may happen here or there. It's more the sense that if you're a young person online a lot, watching folks like Fuentes, you start to think that this rhetoric is okay. And so
according to Majority Report, you're sus for knowing Nazi symbols.
think the idea that this is going to become something that folks in Congress believe, that folks in the more mainstream media believe, I think that's what's most alarming in this moment.
Arno Rosenfeld of The Forward, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.